Russia has accused the U.S. of fueling the Ukrainian crisis, citing Washington's interventions in other countries as evidence of nefarious activity. The comments came from the Russian envoy to the UN, speaking at the Security Council as the conflict in Ukraine enters its second year.
The U.S. and its NATO allies have appropriated the right to interfere in any international issues and the internal affairs of other states, and Ukraine is a clear example of this. Western leaders deceived us before, and they want to keep doing that by putting the right of NATO to expand uncontrollably to an absolute level. Since the end of the Cold War, the U.S. has conducted 251 military operations abroad, causing enormous damage to other countries. The collective West must accept the fact that there are other players on the world arena who have their own interests, and that it is necessary to coexist with them and even cooperate on an equal basis with mutual respect.
Russia had the opportunity, as a permanent member of the Security Council, to come forward and talk about the truth of the matter. And we heard Russian Ambassador Nebenzia very thoroughly refuting the selective nature of the U.S. approach when it comes to things like human rights and concerns about supposed aggression, etc. Nebenzia pretty thoroughly debunked the claims being repeated by U.S. leaders and their allies at the Security Council. The meeting was essentially, because of the anniversary of the denazification operation, the various U.S.-aligned countries, including Ukraine, were given a platform at the UN Security Council to give speeches condemning Russia, accusing Russia of atrocities, etc. However, China, also a permanent member of the Security Council, took to the floor at the meeting, and when China spoke, they echoed much of what Russia said, and in addition to that, they called for talks toward resolving the conflict to begin without preconditions. Here's what we heard from the Chinese representative.
Some countries, while stressing sovereignty and territorial integrity on the Ukraine issue, are blatantly interfering in other countries' internal affairs and undermining their sovereignty and territorial integrity. This reveals a double standard at full display. Security is not an exclusive right enjoyed only by some countries. The security of a country should not be pursued at the expense of others. Strengthening or even expanding military blocs will only undermine regional security. Russia, Ukraine, and European countries are neighbors that cannot physically move away from each other. To realize lasting peace in Europe, the Cold War mentality and bloc of confrontation must be abandoned.
China recently put forward a scenario for a resolution of the conflict, trying to move toward an end to the conflict. However, that scenario put forward by Beijing was roundly rejected by the United States, the very same United States that is continually insisting that it's Russia that is preventing negotiations from taking place.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Secretary of State has been ridiculed after saying big countries shouldn't bully others. Russia's foreign ministry spokeswoman replied with a sarcastic post, reminding Antony Blinken of his own nation's track record.
Viscerally, most Americans don't like to see a big country bullying another, and they just feel it's wrong and want to do something about it. One country just can't attack its neighbor, can't try to seize its land by force, can't try to erase it from the map, can't bully it.
Was it not the U.S. that attacked Iraq? Or is Iraq not a small enough country? Unless I'm mistaken, Blinken represents the USA and not some other country, so the Secretary of State should at least know his own state's history.
In Iraq alone, up to 1.4 million people died due to the consequences of the U.S. invasion, according to one survey. A Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson said on Friday that 37 million people were displaced following the U.S. interventions in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. Since the Second World War, Washington has been militarily involved in conflicts in Asia, Latin America, Yugoslavia, and throughout the Middle East. Almost all of Washington's interventions were justified by defending democracy or fighting terrorism. That's despite the fact that most of these conflicts led to political chaos and high civilian casualties in the countries involved. Media and political analyst Lionel told us the current conflict in Ukraine is important for Moscow because of the risk of U.S. military involvement right at Russia's doorstep.